Alfred Nairo.
Thank you.
Kia ora,
Mr.
and
Speaker. Mitaki mata, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to take a call on the Victims' Orders Against Violent Offenders Bill in its first reading. I am concerned about the member, David Clendon, because what I continue to hear, what we continue to hear, but what New Zealanders need to continue to know and understand is that the Greens are continually looking and focusing on the rehabilitation and the rights of the offenders as opposed to those of the victims.
That's right.
The National Party is focused on ensuring that the rights and the balancing those responsibilities for the victims are clearly paramount for us.
That's right.
What we've heard from the Greens, in particular Mr. Clendon, is continuing about rehabilitation. We have no problem with that. In fact, the Honourable Minister Tolle has actually had a regime of rehabilitation that's proving successful as it is now. However, this particular piece of bill is dealing with serious offenders. And in this case, it irks me, and I think the rest of New Zealand should understand this, that what the Greens are saying, let's look at the rights of the offender. Let's look at their freedom to move and to be able to rehabilitate themselves into those communities. The very communities in which they have caused harm and concern, where they've caused trauma and tragedy for family and for victims. And in particular, as the Honourable Member Leanne Dalziel said, when we see victims of rape and of this sexual nature and crime and offending, it abhors everyone. It abhors everyone. But what continues to, I suppose, offend, some of us here, is that the Greens continue to say the rights of the offenders should be put forward ahead of the rights of the victims. Right. Mr. Speaker, that's not what we're about. We're about ensuring that this bill ensures that the rights of the victims are upheld. It's unacceptable to have a situation where a victim of serious crime may have unwanted contact with an attacker. Now, in reading the impact, assessment and statement, the regulatory impact statement, and there was some comment by the Honourable Member Dalziel about the 3 community law centres, the consultation that was had, 2 victims' representatives and the Ministry of Women's Affairs. Again, Mr. Speaker, the intent is because this is a very focused piece of legislation in a suite of other forms of legislation that this government is undertaking. It's focused in particularly around victims of violent sexual crime that's here. So therefore it's important that we go particularly to those who have specialty, experience and knowledge around this. Mr. Speaker, it was fair to say that the respondents weren't totally in agreement. However, what they were in agreement is that the current status quo is not adequate. And so therefore, hence the reason for the change. In fact, arguments against introducing a new regime and a new order included that it would breach a person's right of freedom. However, 2 respondents clearly said this: there is clear support for the introduction of a new order stating that it would provide victims with an element of certainty and may help to reduce the levels of anxiety victims experience when their offender is released. Mr. Speaker, this is clear evidence. The fact is that the transition of this bill into its first reading and into select committee absolutely has the process where submissions can be heard, a wider form of being able to be informed about how we can transform this bill. But Mr. Speaker, make it very clear that from this side, we're very clear that this bill ensures that victims can no longer feel intimidated by an offender moving into their local area near their home or their workplace. Mr. Speaker, I finally just want to say that when people talk about the context of what we're doing, this is not a lazy piece of legislation. This is not a legislation that is taken lightly at all. In fact, in the suite of things, Mr. Speaker, can I also state the fact is that this is what's happening right up and down the country. We are seeing that New Zealand crime rates are lowest on record. The fiscal year crime statistics released today show recorded crime is continuing to drop with a 5.2% decrease on the previous year.
That's right.
So the Deputy Police Commissioner, Viv Rickard, his comments were this: these figures indicate that New Zealand is becoming a safer place to live. They will act as further motivation to keep our focus firmly on preventing crime before it happens. That is the best form of rehabilitation, Mr. Speaker, that we are taking. However, in saying that, we do see the importance because sexual assaults and related offences have increased by 3.6%. Sexual offending is known to be significantly underreported, so it is difficult to know to what extent this increase is as a result of increased reporting rather than increased offending. Mr. Speaker, in understanding this, hence the reason why this bill, and going into its first reading, then going into the select committee so they can hear submissions, is absolutely important. It's timely, it's not lazy, it's intentional. This balances the rights of victims. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill two in its first reading and two select committee. I commend this bill to the House.
Good speech.
Thank you. I call the honourable member Dennis